Hey guys, this is Jason Enos, and I wanted to show you something that I've kind of experienced when I've been doing photo shoots on my own. Oftentimes you'll get home from a photo shoot, and especially when the subject is in motion, you'll zoom in on a photo. And this is a photo of the lovely cat of all trades. And she was walking through the shot, and I clicked when I thought she was in focus. But unfortunately, when I got home, I saw that she wasn't in focus. Oh, yeah, I must have missed it by just a couple split-second timing, and it's kind of one of those unfortunate things. So I want to show you guys how you could possibly maybe get the photo back to a level where it would actually be usable again. Get some of that where the focus is back on her and not on the background. So I wanted to show you a few things about that. Now, really quickly, this photo's already been kind of adjusted and edited from the raw, but as you can see, she is very blurry and the background is really crisp. So the focal point must have been on the foliage when I clicked that button, when I clicked the shutter. So I'm going to show you a quick thing that I learned to reverse that. It's what's called a frequency separation. So for that, you basically are creating a situation where you have two separate layers, one that has all of your texture information and one that has all of your color information. So let's go ahead and create that really quickly. And for this, I'm using Photoshop Elements. You could use any version of Photoshop. There might be quick ways of doing this on regular Photoshop, but Photoshop Elements is what I have, so that's what we're going to work with, and to show you that this is a technique you can do just as easily, even if you don't have the highest or most recent version of Photoshop. Now for this, we simply create a duplicate layer identical to the first. Now to that, we just click and drag the layer up to this little button here. That is your Create New Layer tool. Now I want to go ahead and take that the top layer, and apply a filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Now for that, I usually apply about 4 pixels. Go ahead and select OK. The goal is to get all texture basically buffed out of there. Grab both layers, click and drag those to duplicate layer. So what we're doing is creating basically a situation where we have the original 2 layers but duplicated on top. So it's the first photo untouched, the second photo, which is the photo blurry, the original photo again, and the original photo blurry again. Now for this, we want to click just the top layer and select Control I. That inverts it and makes it a negative. Okay, so that's just Command I, and it creates basically a negative of the image. Now we're going to reduce this to a 50% opacity, which means we're just going to barely have it 50% visible, 50% invisible. And as you can see, you could barely make out a lot of the texture in the photo. Now what this is doing by creating an inverse of itself that's blurry and putting on top of itself is what we're doing is we're creating basically a situation where we have one layer that's subtracting away the other layer, and the only difference is the texture. So that basically creates one whole layer, or we're about to create that layer. Just select both layers, right click, and say Merge Layers. Now what that does is it creates one layer that is just the textures as a gray option. Now if you notice the thumbnail hasn't updated, just turn on the layer. Now it looks like an updated thumbnail showing the gray layer. But all this gray layer is essentially just the textures. And that's fine. That's exactly what we want. As you notice, as we zoom out, we can barely see the textures, but there they are again. Now what we want to do for this is we're going to make this layer linear light. So just the top layer, select that, make that linear light. We're going to rename this layer Texture, because this will be the layer that just contains the texture. Rename the one below it Color. In a normal frequency separation, these would be the 2 we would adjust differently. So if we wanted just the color, and we want to do is remove, like say, a color blemish, like a hair dye line, something that was just a flaw with the color, but the texture needed to be the same. That would be what we would remove. We would go to the color layer and make those adjustments. If it was something that was wrong with the texture, like an uneven part, for example, this would be a great way to edit the hair. If there was a hair strand that didn't belong where it was, we could use the texture layer and heal it up that way. But what we're going to do is we're going to use the texture layer to double up on the textures that were not bold enough, and we're going to basically turn off the color layer. As you can see, that really makes a very, very sharp contrast, but it also doubles up on the texture on the leaves. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a layer mask on the texture layer. So that we just click on that button up here. Now, for this, I'm going to take that layer, grab the paint bucket tool, make sure you click just that layer so the little blue outlines around that. If you notice, my colors went from a color to black and white. Swap that to black and fill everything. Now, I'm going to probably do the same here just to show you something really neat. I'm going to take that, create a layer mask, and do the same thing. Now, for this layer, the texture layer, I'm going to grab a brush with just white, and every place, and make it about a 20% opacity. For every place I want to bring in some sharpness and texture, using the bracket keys to adjust, I'm going to just click on the areas I want just crisped up a little bit. Around her lips a little bit, just give it a little bit of definition there. On her nose, just a little bit. And if you notice, these little wonderful bands that she has on her dress, they're very, very blurry. So a couple clicks with the white, and you can bring that right back. As you can see, it sharpens it right up. Same down here. Little bit of drawing with that, just to bring in some sharpness and definition in that. You can even do that over the hairs too, just to bring in some of the hair definition. There's also some parts of the beadwork that need to be just a bit sharpened up. You can see it sharpening up. And actually, it's kind of a hard thing to see with it on 20%. But if I take this and I turn off the layer, watch how it, whoops, that right clicked. That's without it. That's with it. It just sharpens it up just a little bit more. Oops, that was a right click. Sorry about that, guys. So it just sharpens it up. This is the original. And this is where the addition to sharpening. See, just a little bit more. Now, for the background, as you can see, it's really still sharp. Maybe a bit more sharp than it ought to be. So for that, I can grab the same tool, the white brush, and go to the color layer, which is the blurrier one. And now I can put a nice brush over the top of that. And actually, what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to zoom out a little bit more and get a much bigger brush and paint a much bigger area. Just to make the background a little bit more out of focus than her. And as you can see, it's just slightly out of focus. Apply the same up here. Just enough to knock some of those sharp edges off of it, just so it reduces the visual importance of that area. And again, I'm going to group these two layers by clicking on both with Shift, holding down Shift while I click both. Then I'm going to click and drag those to this button right here. That is your Create Group layer. So now I have a grouping, which is basically my frequency separation layers, which I can then turn off and show you. That's the original photo. And this is with the adjustments made. See how she's just coming more into focus? And actually I can take my brush tool and I want to heighten up a little bit more on her face, just a little bit more on the eyes. That's a couple clicks, really sharpens it up. Couple clicks on that. And again, I'm leaving the hair very untouched because I like the softness that it has in the original photo. So we're going to scroll back up again and I'll show you the difference between the two. This is the touched up photo. That's the original. Touched up, original. And see, if it seems like it's a bit too harsh, I can always take this layer and then adjust it down to whatever I want. I want it to be completely gone or somewhere in between. That's about right there. I think I like that. It's a little bit crisp without being too overly exaggerated. The other one looks almost like it's too high contrast, but that's fine. We can then adjust it by adjusting the opacity of the entire level. So this gives you more control over the sharpness of that, as opposed to like an Unsharp Mask where it's basically going to unsharp everything. This lets you kind of push and pull and determine how much sharpness or how much blur you want to instigate and introduce to the photo. So I hope that helped you out, guys. If it did, drop me a like, subscribe so you can see more content. I do all kinds of live demos like this on my Twitch at twitch.tv/JasonEnosArt. It's also a great way to ask me questions live. If I don't know the answer, I'll figure one out. But I share a lot of Photoshop type tips and tricks over there, and I'll also be posting some right here. So definitely check that out, and I hope you guys enjoy the content. Drop in again soon for some more, and let me know what you think. If there's something you want me to tackle, drop it in the comments down below, and I'd like to kind of figure out how to solve that problem. Bye, guys.